Hallelujah, his soul is marching on. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Stow Acres on this beautiful, warm summer day. We are here for Rediscover Mapledale, and we welcome you to this event. Sponsored, it's made possible by a Reading Frederick Douglass Together grant from Mass Humanities and the Mass Cultural Council. Reading Frederick Douglass Together grants for public readings and discussion in Massachusetts of the orator's famous address, What to the Slave is the 4th of July. Hosted by Rediscover Mapledale, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization with a long-lasting vision to continue to commemorate Black history in Stow, Massachusetts. My name is Kelly Waller, and I am the founder and organizer for Rediscover Mapledale, and we have a treat for you today. We will be doing the reading, and we have wonderful volunteers that are going to help us read that wonderful speech. And I just wanted to say, a few things. Frederick Douglass inspires us, as many people in history do. We started this organization because Robert H. Hawkins built the first 9 holes of golf in Stow, and we believe in New England here, right on these grounds. This is the old farmhouse that we're standing in that was converted into the golf club, and there has been additions and renovations in order to make this a great wedding venue as well. Many people get married here. And we are going to celebrate Frederick Douglass. It is not Douglass Day, but as a teacher, I do love to celebrate Douglass Day on February 14th every year. But we're still going to celebrate today with reading a speech together in community to give us action and to collectively show our love of America and our democracy. So we have an amazing speaker. Sean is going to get started. He's going to tell stories celebrating freedom further extended in Confederate defeat on the 4th of July. During and after the Civil War, the 4th of July became a distinctly Black holiday. Hear tales of how a Black patriot of the Revolutionary War and abolitionists from New York worked to extend the promises of our Declaration of Independence. All right, before I introduce Sean, you need to know a few things about him. Come on in, welcome. I am wearing a Quack Walker Day t-shirt today. I also have lots of flair. It's the 250th. We're celebrating the 250th of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And Sean Osborne is the reason why many of us know the name Quack Walker. And he's also the reason, because he believes in action, he believes in advocacy. He created Emancipation Day, otherwise known as Quack Walker Day, and we celebrate in Massachusetts now on July 8th of every year. So, cheers to Sean for teaching us and continuing our learning. All right, so about Sean. He is a public historian. He enjoys sharing his research through stories and exhibitions. He has performed in schools, museums, and workplaces. Mr. Osborne is a collaborative problem solver. He is the founder and principal of OSD Engineering Consultants. He is a veteran-owned consulting firm that provides resiliency planning, workforce training, and infrastructure design services for municipal clients throughout New England. He earned his BS in Civil Engineering, degree from Princeton University, and an MS in Civil Engineering from UMass Lowell. He holds a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in the Workplace Certificate from the University of South Florida. Mr. Osborne is the co-founder and past president of the Association of Black Citizens of Lexington. I know there's some people from Lexington here. And he is an ABCL historian. He continues to research and create programmings for the Black History Project in Lexington. a few more things. He's also the owner of Tricons to Red Tails, a multi-platform production company. He has created a cartoon documentary that the Lexington History Museum shows. They just redid the depot. I'm just saying all of this because I'm a teacher in Lexington, and it is really cool when you get the children out to visit these places. And he also started a campaign this year. Okay, Quack Walker Day was a few years ago, and this year he created he created the New England National Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day. It passed just this spring during this legislative session, and we celebrated it in March. So, without further ado, Sean Osborne, Stories, Independence Further Extended.
Thanks, Kelly.
You're welcome.
So if ever you need a hype man, call Kelly. So this is really cool. I met some more speakers on the side. So again, I'm Sean Osborne. Just a few things in case you want to go to Lexington and watch the animated shorts. They are at the Visitor Center. It's free, unlike the Lexington History Museum at the Depot, which you have to pay to get into. But go into the Visitor Center. There are 3 animated shorts there. One is on some ride guy on a horse. What's his name? Name?
Escapes me.
Paul Revere. Yes. It's Paul Revere guy. So there's a Paul Revere ride, and then there's that Battle of Lexington, because who does it conquered? The Battle of Lexington, which is that short features Prince Estabrook and Eli Purdue, and then the third. They're all like 3 to 5 minutes. And the third one is Pompey Fisk. And Pompey Fisk was someone who was there and experienced the Battle of Fisk Hill, the bloodiest battle of April 19th, and then decided for no good reason, I think I'm going to enlist. That sounds a great idea. Of course, you think, oh yeah, he was enslaved, and it's always better to be away. But beyond that, he does, so you have Private Fisk, Private Estabrook, and Private Purdue. And that's part of the idea, is to talk about black soldiers, which if you talk about Tricons Red Tails, that is sort of my theme of what I do. If you go to Nesson, or you go to the Red Sox Facebook page, you can see the 2 surviving members of Massachusetts Tuskegee Airmen throwing out the first pitch. So 99-year-old Brigadier General Enoch Woodhouse, and almost 100 years old, has 2 more months, Dr. Harold May. It was a beautiful day. Red Sox lost, but it was a beautiful day. So we're here for the storytelling portion. So I know we're using the microphone for the camera, so I will keep using the microphone for the room. So let's go ahead and start with, how did I end up here? So at some point, 20 plus years ago, I bought a house in Stow. And I was so excited because I love land. Had an acre, wander around, I could see the deer come by, I could see the turkeys come by, they'd stop at the edge of the road, they look both ways, before they cross. I found turkeys can fly, and I thought, I need a hunting license. Because all I see is free food. And so then I started a small garden outside, and the chipmunks said, God bless you. Love those strawberries. And so I learned that there's a reason why we plant things like asparagus and rhubarb and other herbs, like sorrel and other things, because they're not as tasty. And you actually get a chance to eat them. So go a little further west with me to 1774 to Granville. So Granville, for those of you who don't know tiny towns in Massachusetts, is west of Springfield on the Connecticut border. So in Granville, there's a 21-year-old. And like I was in Stow, he is giddy. Why? Because he has a house of his own. It is 20 feet by 20 feet, or thereabouts. He gets to walk in, not touch the other wall, and see a nice fireplace. And he gets to turn right and then left, and there's a little bedroom just bigger than his bed. And if he has any guests, he has a pull-down bed for them, but otherwise he has a room for himself for reading and cooking and eating, and a room for sleeping. And then he has a little cellar underneath. And then up through one door, he has a nice little nook. He looks up there and he thinks, I can store things there instead of sleeping there. His name is Lemuel Haynes, and he is a Minuteman. And it is through these regular trips out to the green to practice with the other Minutemen that he gets a lot of his income. But money's okay. It's the joy of having his own space. It's the joy of being able to travel a little bit east to Springfield and spend a little bit of extra money that he has. Yes, he and the other Minutemen are preparing to defend their liberties, their freedoms from the evil king and his armies. But every day is a good day because he's in his own space. And then comes the alarm, April 19, 1775. That alarm doesn't just go with Paul Revere to Lexington and then he gets stopped and then Prescott helps it go across to Concord. It goes across the Northeast. Riders are everywhere. And he and the Granville militia respond by marching into Boston. They get to Boston. Then he's part of the siege. That's 75. Most 75 he spends in Boston, around Boston, as part of the siege. When it's successful, he heads back home to Granville. And he sees his neighbor, Deacon Rose. He says, Deacon Rose, how are you? It's me. It's Lemuel. Deacon Rose reaches over and he says, is that you? And he feels his face. He says, oh, yes. That is you, Lemuel. You've lost some weight. I said, yes. War is not good for gaining weight. He says, so what are you going to do? He said, well, I'm hoping that my asparagus and my rhubarb is still there. I can have something to eat. Maybe I'll stew some rabbit. And then I'm just going to rest. What's happened with you? I said, well, do you remember Mistress Rose? Oh, yes, she was lovely. She died. Oh, so sorry. Yes, she's buried with our daughter, the one who died before he came live with us. So I'm so sorry to hear that. So what about you? Did you learn anything outside of how to lose weight while you were in Boston? He said, yeah. I met a lot of men who looked like me. Some darker, some lighter. But they looked like me. But they weren't all free like me. Some of them were enslaved, and yet they were privates in the Continental Army. They were fighting for freedom, yet they were not free. That seemed odd to me. The deacon said, do you remember the other black folks in the church? when you would walk me to church every Sunday, my sight was starting to go. Do you remember them? Yes. Yes, some of them weren't free either. I know, but I wasn't free then either, so that was okay. See, no, you don't understand. You had a contract. You turned 21. You were an indentured orphan. You were going to be free. That was definite. They didn't have a contract. They don't have a contract. They are still enslaved. So you're telling me this problem that I had to go all the way to Boston to see was always here? Yes. Yes, it was. Can we come back to this conversation? I need to go rest. And so he did. He went back to his 20 by 20 house, which didn't seem so bright and cheery anymore. And he rested. He had lots of fluids, he had a little bit of food, and he rested. And then he went back to go see the deacon, and he said, "Tell me again about my parents. Tell me how I got here to Granville." The deacon said, "Well, there was an ad. It said, boy, 5 months old, named Lemuel, needs a home. Parents can't keep him. Mulatto. Father, African, mother, white." Usually I skip all those ads, but the name Lemuel caught my eye. That's a biblical name. I thought, who are these parents that go for Proverbs names? No one picks a Proverbs name. Everybody picks their name from one of the apostles or from somebody in the, I don't know, the Mosaic texts. But no one picks a name from Proverbs. Lemuel? So I was intrigued. So I put in a bid, and the town of West Hartford, Connecticut accepted it. And thus, you were bound to me and Mistress Rose until you turned 21 years old. And in return, we were to teach you how to read and write and do arithmetic and give you food and shelter. And you, on the other hand, were to do everything we asked you to do the first time. Which, as a parent of 4 children, was beautiful. But we always knew at some point you were going to be out on your own. So we wanted you to understand how the world worked. So that's why you always came with me. Church, town meeting. I think I rolled off the select board by the time that you were able to come with me. But, I was still active in town. I wanted you to understand government. And you fell in love with the community. And that's great. And you chose to stay here, and that's wonderful. And that's why I sold you that land. Because I wanted you to be here because you wanted to be here. But yes, you're right. There are those who don't have that option. So what are you going to do? I was thinking about re-enlisting. Because if that's what you feel you're called to do, then sure, re-enlist. But before you do that, go back. Read Proverbs 31. See what promise your parents saw in you. And then decide. So he did. And he sat first next to the fire. Then he sat on his bed in the warmth of the fireplace and went back and forth and back and forth and kept reading about this King Lemuel. King Lemuel had a mother who really loved him and gave him great advice. And she said, don't chase after women or liquor. And she also said, yes, exactly, another mother in the house. And she also said, speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Take care of the poor and the orphan. So Lemuel thought about this. He thought. I can do the first two while being a private again, but I can't do the last two. I can't speak up for those who can't speak for themselves while in the military hierarchy. So maybe relisting is not for me. So he goes back and he sees Deacon Rose. Because Deacon Rose is, like the father figure to him. And he says, Deacon, I've read it, I pondered, I've talked to God, and this is what I'm thinking. Do you remember when you used to bring me up forward to fill in because the congregation couldn't afford, when our minister was on vacation, to hire somebody and you'd have me speak from the pulpit? He said, yeah, you're pretty good. Sometimes, you would read stuff that you'd found elsewhere, but every now and then you'd write your own sermon. And it was nice. It was well received. I'm thinking about ministry. He goes, imagine that. Imagine that. King Lemuel, a minister. Okay. I don't think I've met a black minister, but yeah, sure, for sure. That sounds great. So then along comes July 4th, 1776. July 5th and July 6th, and a copy of the Declaration of Independence is available for him to read. He says, all men are created free and equal. Agreed. But they don't have the same rights as all white men. Let me read through this document a little bit closer and see if I missed something. So again, like David Proverbs, he went back and forth from the front room to the bedroom, reading the Declaration, trying to find where liberty was further extended beyond the white men who were listed as signers. Eureka! I'll write a sermon. Liberty further extended, or the illicit acts of slavery. And so he did. And then he asked the deacon to ask the most of the church if he could read it there, and they did. They said yes. And he read there, and it was well received. And then word got out that he wanted to be a minister, and he met other ministers in Massachusetts and Connecticut who also believed that slavery was illicit, that it was illegal, that it was an abomination before God. And he joined them, and they helped him to take his desire to be a minister out into the world. First, he had to go to the hinterlands. We call it Vermont. He had to go to Vermont, and he had to proselytize in Vermont. And he loved it there. Oh, there was nobody around except for 5 or 6 people. And he could just go from place to place and really, really enjoy himself in Vermont. And the people loved him. And then he came back, and they said, good job. You do have promise here. And so he went on to do some more ministry work, not yet ordained, but getting close. And then he gets ordained, but he has no church. And then comes 1783. And he hears about, a little bit north and east of Springfield, this case in Worcester about this enslaved black guy named Quack Walker who says to his enslaver, Nathaniel Jennison, I'm leaving. I'm going over there. I'm going to work for pay. Any mail comes in, send over there. Any visitors come, send them over there. I'll be just down the road. It's a short 2-hour walk. To which Jennison responds, what, really? Notice? No one gives notice, because I thought it'd be fair. Notice is good. So he goes and he works for the Caldwells. And Jennison comes to visit. He says, would you mind coming back home? He goes, home? I get paid at this home. Will I get paid there and back wages? No. Well then, I think home here is good. So after 4 weeks of saying no, or refusing the request to come back home, Quock is assaulted. And then he is shackled. But he is Quock Walker, so the assault is unlike the usual assaults in colonial Massachusetts. This is only 5 hits with the back of a whip. Many enslaved people in Massachusetts were getting hit 100 plus times daily. He was shackled for a few hours. Why? Because the people he worked for had standing, and they made sure that he was released. So what is a black man supposed to do after that happens? Take him to court. So he takes Jennison to court, and in June of 1781, the Worcester court says, he is not the proper Negro servant of the defendant, and what were you thinking when you assaulted him? Give him 50 pounds for his pain and anguish. 50 pounds, says Jennison. Have you lost your mind? The jury didn't care. They served their purpose. They left. But the Attorney General cared. The Attorney General said, who is this audacious black man in Barre, Massachusetts? Another tiny town on the New Hampshire border as opposed to Granville. And so it goes to the Supreme Judicial Court, and they find Jennison guilty not of civil assault, first case, but in the last case, 83, of criminal assault. To which the Chief Justice says, by this case, slavery is ended in Massachusetts. So the folks in Granville, especially Lemuel, are learning this decision. They're thinking, how does this end slavery? And then the deacon helps Lemuel screw in the light bulb completely. He says, the enslaved people in Granville and across the state are not staying because of a tongue lashing. They are not staying because of harsh words. They're staying because of the threat of and the actual existence of assault. If an enslaver cannot assault them to make them stay and work for free, then there is no system of slavery. Okay. So liberty has been further extended here in Massachusetts? Yes, it has. Why do you ask? I'll go to Connecticut then. So he accepts an offer of a church in Connecticut. He thinks, I will change the world here in Connecticut. 2 years later, he realizes it's not going to happen, and he goes to Vermont. And the folks in Vermont are like, oh my goodness, he came back. We have this little bitty church. What are you going to do for us? And he said, I am going to help you grow. And he did. And for that, he stayed there for decades. And during that time period, on the 4th of July, especially on the 25th anniversary, he broke out his notes from Liberty Further Extended, and he rewrote it. And he presented another sermon about the illegality of slavery and how, more specifically, how it was an act that was against the will of God. So when he retired and moved to New York, he thought, oh no, I'm in Connecticut again. They still have slavery here. But then in 1826, slavery ended in New York. In fact, finally, I get to die in a place where liberty was further extended. And so in 1833, Daniel Haynes, Minuteman, Revolutionary War veteran, the first black ordained minister in America, died in a state that had ended slavery before he did so. Thank you. So I mentioned New York. And so this next story is in New York. When I was working in a large office, I could always tell who the parents were who had newborns because they still rocked when talking to you. Ah, you remember that? Yes. Thank you. Still rocking, all right? You're like, so how's your day? Where's the work? How's it going? Oh, it's fine. It's good. Why do you ask? So you sleeping well? Yes, fine. 3 hours or 4? 2.5. Okay, great. So this story starts with a mother who is doing the same thing. And she's saying to her daughter, Isabella, sleep, please sleep. And Isabella is saying, talk to me some more, as babies like to do. Wah, wah. So she sings her this lullaby. Sleep, baby, sleep. Outside walks a sheep who drinks its meat, its milk so sweet. Sleep, baby, sleep. And she does this, and she does this as she rocks from left to right, from left to right, and walking around. And finally, before dawn, Isabella falls asleep, and her mother goes to work. Isabella continues to sing, to hear the song sung to her, and then as her older siblings are sold away from the family, she would sing this song to herself to soothe herself and allow her to sleep through the pain. Sleep, baby, sleep. Outside walks a sheep with white feet, who likes its milk so sweet. At 9, she's sold away. And over time, as she gets older, she has a child that she did not want to have. And then she gets married to a man she didn't want to marry, but her enslaver wanted her to marry him, and they have 3 more children. And then New York does this thing that only people that don't fully understand the humanity of the world would do. They say, you know, the 4th of July is a day that we are going to emancipate the enslaved people in our state who were born after 1799. Which her enslaver makes her say to Isabella, you're 97, so you don't count. And so she remains enslaved with children who she has also taught this song. And then New York changes the rules again and says, you know, July 4th, 1827, everybody will be free. Every enslaved person will be free. 1826, she says to her enslaver, remember our conversation about me being released early because of that thing you did to me before that produced a child? He said, yeah, no. So Isabella grabs her youngest child and she walks with her to a family that she knows, another Dutch family, because in New York, the enslavers were Dutch, primarily. And they say, tell us your tale of woe. And she tells them the tale of woe, and they say, we'll keep you until July 4th. But in order to make sure that you are not kidnapped by him, we will pay him for your services. So they do. Come July 4th, she goes to pick up her son, Peter, who she couldn't bring with her, and he's gone. Peter has been sold away. He is now in the South, the Southeast. Gang slavery as opposed to task slavery of New England. Isabella doesn't know what to do, so she goes back to the family and she, again, tells her tale of woe. And they say, that's illegal. Is it illegal, or just wrong illegal? No, it's illegal. Excellent. So they take him to court, and Peter gets brought back. And even though Peter is now a teenager, she holds him and she rocks him. She says, sleep, baby, sleep. Outside walks a sheep with white feet, who likes its milk so sweet. And Peter is able to recover from leaving New York and all that he knew and being enslaved in the South and now being a free man, and he becomes a seaman and leaves the coast, the east coast of Atlantic coast of America, and is never seen again. Isabella has an epiphany. She says, I need to do more. And part of my doing more is changing my name. So she changed her name to Sojourner Truth. And then she went on to talk across the United States about the importance of women's rights, ending slavery across the country, and making sure that Black people signed up to fight in the Civil War. And like Frederick Douglass, her and his children, two of his sons, her grandson, also a Caldwell, fought with the 54th in the Civil War. So that's her story, Isabella, otherwise known as Storyteller. So our last story is about those soldiers of the Civil War. So my father is 30-year Army veteran, and so part of his joy was to take us to as many sites as possible from any battle. From Waterloo to the Civil War, to the Revolutionary War. If there was a plaque, we were stopping. So when we would drive from Georgia to Texas, my dad was stationed outside of Augusta at Fort Gordon, and we would ride to Texas to visit family. We would never, ever, ever, ever stop in Mississippi. Except for this one time. He said, we should stop in Vicksburg. I thought, why Vicksburg? He said, oh, you love Vicksburg. Read the plaques. So Vicksburg is one of the best Confederate surrender days of the Civil War. But they didn't say that on the plaques. I learned it later. So Vicksburg surrendered on July 4th, 1863. And all the enslaved people in the county said, it's a good day. And they all came into Vicksburg and they said, wow, you know what? The sun feels good. This is a good day. And the white folks of Vicksburg, because those who were against the Confederacy had left by then, it was a bad day. It was a very bad day. How bad day is a bad day? It was such a bad day that they did not celebrate July 4th as the nation's holiday, that is the United States of America holiday, until the 1970s. It's a good Confederate surrender day. So whenever you're thinking, what was slaves July 4th? Think Vicksburg. It's a good day. So this takes us to Charleston. So Charleston is that city that decided that South Carolina needs to be first. So we will get this party started by firing on their own people. Good old Fort Sumter. So then what happens in 65? Every soldier remembers the dates. So, in February of 1865, the Union soldiers accepted the surrender of Charleston. That happened to be the 4th anniversary of the king treasoner of the Confederacy becoming president. Who would that be? Anybody? Jefferson Davis. It's his 4th anniversary. Happy anniversary, by the way. The first state just surrendered. So our story begins, as many stories do in the military, with a bunch of soldiers at a fireside. And they are preparing for the 4th of July parade in Charleston. So one of them says, hey, did you hear the senior ranking black military member in the Union Army is coming? Who's that? He's some lieutenant colonel. I think he's a doctor. Anybody else coming to watch us parade through? Yeah, Denmark Vesey's son is coming. Stop it. Really? That's so cool. So, they have a little bit light, watered down beer because water isn't safe. They have some more beer, have a little bit of food. And then the stories start to flow. You there. What brings you to Charleston? I'm with the 21st. We were enslaved in the area, and then as the Union made their way from the coast in, we were freed, and I was so happy to join. It was so much fun to have a weapon in my hand. Okay. What about you? What brings you here? It's a family affair. So, my name is Silas Burdu from Vermont. So my father, he didn't fight in the Revolutionary War, but 2 of his cousins did. Some guy named Eli, who I never really met, but then my favorite relative, Silas. Oh, Silas is great. He told me, if you ever have an opportunity to get paid to shoot at white people, take it. And I said, oh my goodness, will that ever happen? He said, hopefully not. But my uncle, what was his name? Moses. He fought the French and Indian War, and he said, if ever you get a chance to fight against enemies, foreign or domestic, do so. And those were white people too. And he got paid for that. So, again, I know it's a little young for you, but if you ever get the opportunity, Please take it. So when 1864, Silas continues, I thought, I'll make the short walk to New Bedford and I'll register. So what do you know? I end up here in Charleston. Maybe I will apply for a pension too, like my uncle did. This other guy says, well, I was in New York and I was reading in Douglas's papers about, what was it called? Oh yeah, the Emancipation and the Negro Army. And I thought, so the Emancipation Proclamation frees no one until there are a series of Confederate surrender days. I should help out with that. So I joined in. And then there were others who piped up and told their stories. And then there is this guy from Memphis, Tennessee. And he said, my city is the reason why we're all here. Because the folks in Tennessee were really good at surrendering. 1862, imagine that. Nashville has already surrendered. Memphis is now the capital of Tennessee, defending the Mississippi River. I was a little boy then, and I was watching from the river, and there were thousands of white folks, and they were like, yes, this is going to be a great battle. Yes! And then 4 hours later, they were crying. All the Confederate ships had either been sunk or disabled. 200 Confederate sailors were dead. One member of the Union was fatally wounded. And then came in all of these federal troops, including General Grant. And General Grant made sure that July 4th, we had a good celebration. And then he brought in some guy named Tecumseh Sherman. And Tecumseh Sherman said, I like Memphis. I've got nothing to do here. They are so docile. They have been beaten thoroughly here in Tennessee. I need to make some war plans. Yes, burning Atlanta sounds good. And so the private continues, without my city of Memphis, we wouldn't be here. Grant makes his name, Sherman makes his plans, and that's why we are here in Charleston celebrating another glorious Confederate surrender day. But what should we sing when we march by the grandstand? What should we sing so that people know how happy we are that this day has come? What should we sing so that people understand how proud we are of this union that finally got around to fighting for the end of slavery? And some guy from the 54th, is always one or two or three, says, there's this song that some guys in Massachusetts wrote about John Brown. John Brown. Is he that guy from Connecticut? Yes, he is. Did he grow up in the same church that Lemuel Haynes used to pastor? Yes, he did. Huh. So where's John Brown now? Oh, no. John Brown's dead. In fact, his body lies rotting in the grave. I know that song. That's that John Brown? Yes, that's that John Brown. And so they all agreed that would be the song that they would sing. And so if you go to the Library of Congress, you will see a photo, well, actually a painting, of the 55th marching by in Charleston singing John Brown's Body. So if you'll join me in singing the copy of John Brown's Body that you have. This is the original, written by fine people from Massachusetts. It's a different song. It doesn't go like that. Okay, so we're gonna go leading with the left side, then the right side. So, well, your right, my left. So, John Brown's body.
Lies smoldering in the grave. John Brown's body lies smoldering in the grave. John Brown's body lies smoldering in the grave. His soul is marching on.
Everyone!
Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His soul is marching on.
The other side. He's gone.
To be a soldier in the army of the Lord. He's gone to be a soldier in the army of the Lord. He's gone to be a soldier in the army of the Lord. His soul is marching on.
Everybody.
Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His soul is marching on.
Verse 3.
John Brown's knapsack is strapped upon his back. John Brown's knapsack is strapped upon his back. John Brown's knapsack is strapped upon his back. His soul is marching on.
Everyone.
Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His soul is marching on.
Verse 4.
His pet lambs will lead him on the way.
His pet lambs will lead him on the way. His pet lambs will lead him on the way. They go marching on. Everybody.
Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His soul is marching on.
Everybody for your voice. Verse. They will hang Jeff Davis on a tree. Again. They will hang Jeff Davis to a tree. One more time. They will hang Jeff Davis to his tree as we go marching along. Everybody.
Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His soul is marching on.
Last verse. Now 3 rousing cheers for the Union. Now 3 rousing cheers for the Union. Now 3 rousing cheers for the Union as we are marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His soul is marching on. Hip, hip.
Hooray!
Hip, hip.
Hooray!
Hip, hip.
Hooray!
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that. I I think I probably have a loud enough voice without the microphone. I'm not trained with microphones very often. If we want to just take a quick 5-minute break, and then we are going to have a reading of Frederick Douglass, What is the Slave? To the Slave is the 4th of July. So if anyone needs to use the restrooms, they're to the left, the right in the hallway, to my right. And again, we do have emergency exits in the front and the back of the building.
And there's food.
And there's food. So let's say 10 minutes. Let's take a 10-minute break, and then we will get started. Perfect timing, though. So for those who were just not here at the very beginning, I just wanted to introduce our amazing speaker, Sean Osborne, a public historian. He does this work all over the state, but he is based in Lexington, and he started the ABC Black History banners that you see in Lexington in the month of February, and different months throughout the year too. And he is a collaborative problem solver. He's the founder and principal of OSD Engineering Consultants. It's a veteran-owned consulting firm. And he has done so much work this year with the state of Massachusetts to pass, Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day, and a few years ago to celebrate Emancipation Day, otherwise known as Quack Walker Day. So we are so thrilled to have Sean Osborne here, and we are about to start our reading of Frederick Douglass, okay? So I just wanted to acknowledge and thank the Mass Humanities. We received a grant. Rediscover Mapledale is trying to uplift and share Black history in this town of Stow. 7,000 people, but a lot of supporters. And that is in help, in part to Mass Humanities and also the Mass Cultural Council. We received grants from the local cultural councils in the town of Stow this year, and also in the town of Lancaster, which we were really excited about. I just want to say a few things about Frederick Douglass's address, What to the Slave is the 4th of July. It forces us to reckon with the legacy of slavery and the promises of democracy. It is important to acknowledge that reciting these words and discussing its content and context can result in racial or historical trauma. It's hard to have uncomfortable conversations, but we appreciate you being here. At the end of our reading today, we'll have a brief discussion where we just ask you to listen actively, share the air, speak from your own experiences, lean into that discomfort, and practice empathy and grace. Thank you again. Sean Osborne.
So the Association of Black Citizens of Lexington's Black Patriots of Lexington banners are currently up in the Cary Library, and then starting on July 1st and throughout the month of July, they will be up in downtown Lexington. So if you're ever wondering who are those 11 people who were witnesses of April 19th, 1775, and why they're there, you can go over and see them, or you can go to YouTube and you can watch the YouTube series. Just look up Black Patriots of Lexington. So for me, it's all about context, right? So Frederick Douglass's life, to me, is the life of someone whose life would have been changed tremendously if along the way someone had just said yes. If his enslavers in Maryland had said yes, you can go off and do what you want to do, he would not have self-emancipated. If the folks in New Bedford had said yes, you can work here next to us as an experienced caulker of ships, then we wouldn't know who he was. If his enslaver had said, you know what, you're gone, I'm not going to try to recapture you, we don't have this impassioned set of activities in the 1850s when the Fugitive Slave Act is so important to him. He has just come back from England because of the weakness of the federal government and the states and the churches and the individuals to support the liberties espoused in the Declaration of Independence. He comes back and he leaves Massachusetts. Who would leave Massachusetts? Leaves Massachusetts and he goes to New York. He goes to Rochester. And he says, these are not my people either, but it is the state where my primary funder is located. And in 1850, he hosts the Fugitive Slave Law Convention in Cazenovia, New York. It is the largest convention largest gathering of self-emancipated people in the country. Over 50 fugitives are in attendance. In addition, there are over 2,000 people in this little bitty town in New York. They've taken it over. But the important part is that he makes sure that everybody's clear on where he stands, that he has not been cowed by having to go to England and come back. They publish an open letter to American slaves from those who have fled from American slavery. So to those who are currently enslaved, to those who are self-emancipated. It advocates for the immediate absolution of slavery, and it condones the use of violence in efforts to escape. He publishes this in his paper. It is published by other papers, especially in South Carolina. The Fugitive Slave Act is still passed by Congress a few months later. This act requires that slaves be returned to their owners even if they are from or living in a free state. So it's in this context that he is invited by the fine people in Rochester, New York, to come speak. They are, like so many of us get a chance to do, get so self-righteous in the fact that they have ended slavery in New York. He's like, well, I think Congress just said whoop-de-doo. But I'm not sure. But that's how I'm reading it. And so it's in this context that I want you to think about what he is saying through the many voices of the fine volunteers that have come forward to read Frederick Douglass, What to a Slave, with the 4th of July. First speaker.
We have many change makers that are going to come up here and speak. We don't have time to introduce everyone, but we do want to sincerely thank Kate Hogan, our state representative, works at the State House in Massachusetts. Big supporter of history in our town, and the Rediscover Mapledale. So thank you, Kate.
So I will begin. The meaning of the 4th of July for the Negro. Frederick Douglass, July 5th, 1852. Mr. President, friends, and fellow citizens, the task before me is one which requires much previous thought and study from its proper performance. I do not remember ever to have appeared as a speaker before any assembly more shrinkingly, nor with greater distrust of my ability than I do today. The papers and placards say that I am to deliver a 4th of July oration. The fact is, ladies and gentlemen, the distance between this platform and the slave plantation from which I escaped is considerable, and the difficulties to be overcome in getting from the latter to the former are by no means slight. That I am here today is to me a matter of astonishment as well as gratitude. This, for the purpose of this celebration, is a 4th of July. It is the birthday of your national independence and of your political freedom. This to you is what the Passover was to the emancipated people of God. It carries your minds back the day and to the act of your great deliverance. This celebration also marks the beginning of another year of your national life and reminds you that the Republic of America is now 76 years old. I am glad, fellow citizens, that your nation is so young. You are, even now, only in the beginning of your national career, still lingering in the period of childhood. I repeat, I am so glad this is so. There is hope in the thought, and hope is much needed under the dark clouds which lower above the horizon. Fellow citizens, 76 years ago, the people of this country were British subjects. The style and title of your sovereign people, in which you now glory, was not then born. You are under the British crown. Your fathers esteemed the English government and as the home government. England as the fatherland, although a considerable distance from your home, imposed in the exercise of its parental prerogatives upon its colonial children such restraints, burdens, and limitations as, in its mature judgment, it deemed wise, right, and proper. But your fathers, who had not adopted the idea of the infallibility of government and the absolute character of its acts, presumed to differ from the home government in respect to the wisdom and the justice of some of those burdens and restraints. They went so far as to pronounce the measures of government unjust, unreasonable, and oppressive. And although such as ought not to be quietly submitted to, I scarcely need to say, fellow citizens, that my opinion of those measures fully accords with that of your fathers, feeling themselves harshly and unjustly treated by the home government, your fathers, like men of honesty and men of spirit, earnestly sought redress. They petitioned and remonstrated. They did so in a decorous, respectful, and loyal manner. This, however, did not answer the purpose. They saw themselves treated with sovereign indifference, coldness, and scorn. Yet they persevered.
Oppression makes a wise man mad. Your fathers became restive under this treatment. They felt themselves the victims of grievous wrongs, wholly incurable in their colonial capacity. With brave men, there is always a remedy for oppression. Just here, the idea of a total separation of the colonies from the crown was born. It was a startling idea, much so than we at this distance of time regard it. The timid and prudent of that day were, of course, shocked and alarmed by it. This opposition to the then dangerous thought was honest and powerful, but amid all of this terror and a frightened vociferations against it, the alarming and revolutionary idea moved on and the country with it. On the 2nd of July, 1976, 1776, the Old Continental Congress, to the dismay of the lovers of ease and the worshippers of property, clothed that dreadful idea with all the authority of national sanction. They did so in the form of a resolution. We seldom hit upon resolutions drawn up in our day whose transparency is at all equal, resolved that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all the allegiance of the British Crown. Citizens, your fathers made good that resolution. They succeeded, and today you reap the fruits of that success, of their success. The freedom gained is yours, and you, therefore, may properly celebrate this anniversary. The 4th of July is the first great fact in your nation's history, the very ring bolt in the chain of your yet undeveloped destiny. Pride and patriotism, not less than gratitude, prompt you to celebrate and hold it in perpetual remembrance. I have said that the Declaration of Independence is the ringbolt to the chain of your of your nation's destiny. So, indeed, I regard it. The principles contained in that instrument are saving principles. Stand by those principles. Be true to them on all occasions, in all places, against all foes, and at whatever cost.
Fellow citizens, I am not wanting in respect for the fathers of this republic. The signers of the Declaration of Independence were brave men. I cannot contemplate their great deeds with less than admiration. They were statesmen, patriots, and heroes, and for the good they did and the principles they contended for, I will unite with you to honor their memory. They loved their country better than their own private interests, and all will concede that it is a rare virtue that ought to command respect. He who will intelligently lay down his life for his country is a man whom it is not in human nature to despise. Your fathers staked their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor on the cause of their country. In their admiration of liberty, they lost sight of all other interests. They were peaceful men, but they preferred revolution to peaceful submission to bondage. They were quiet men, but they did not shrink from agitating against oppression. They showed forbearance, but they knew its limits. They believed in order, but not in the order of tyranny. With them, nothing was settled that was not right. With them, justice, liberty, and humanity were final, not slavery and oppression. You may well cherish the memory of such men. They were great in their day and generation. Their solid manhood stands out the more as we contrast it with these degenerate times. How circumspect, exact, and proportionate were all their movements. How unlike the politicians of an hour. Their statesmanship looked beyond the passing moment and stretched away into strength into the distant future. Mark them, fully appreciating the hardship to be encountered, firmly believing in the right of their cause, wisely measuring the terrible odds against them. Your fathers, the fathers of this republic, laid the cornerstone of the national superstructure which has risen and still rises in grandeur around you.
Of this fundamental work, this day is the anniversary. Our eyes are met with demonstrations of joyous enthusiasm. The causes which led to the separation of the colonies from the British Crown have never lacked for a tongue. They have all been taught in your common schools, narrated at your firesides, unfolded from your pulpits, and thundered from your legislative halls and are as familiar to your household words. They form the staple of your national poetry and eloquence. I leave, therefore, the great deeds of your fathers to others. My business, if I have any here today, is with the present. The accepted time with God, and his cause is the ever-living now. We have to do with the past only as we can make it useful to the present and to the future. Now is the time, the important time. Your fathers have lived, died, and have done their work, and have done much of it well. You live and must die, and you must do your work. You have no right to enjoy a child's share in the labor of your fathers, unless your children are to be blessed by your labors. You have no right to wear out and waste the hard-earned fame of your fathers to cover your indolence. Fellow citizens, pardon me, allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? And am I, therefore, called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar, and to confess the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us? Would to God, both for your sakes and ours, that an affirmative answer could be truthfully returned to those questions. Then would my task be light, and my burden easy and delightful. But such is not the state of the case. I say it with a sad sense of the disparity between us. I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us.
The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. To drag a man in fetters into the grand illuminated temple of liberty and call upon him to join you in joyous anthems were inhuman mockery and sacrilegious irony. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me by asking me to speak today?
All right now.
Fellow citizens, above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions whose chains, heavy and grievous yesterday, are today rendered more intolerable by the jubilee shouts that reach them. To forget them, to pass lightly over their wrongs, and to chime in with the popular theme would be treason most scandalous and shocking, and would make me a reproach before God and the world. My subject, then, fellow citizens, is American slavery. I shall see this day from the slave's point of view. Standing here, identified with the American bondman, making his wrongs mine, I do not hesitate to declare with all my soul that the character and conduct of this nation never looked blacker to me than on this 4th of July. Whether we turn to the decorations of the past or to the professions of the present, the conduct of the nation seems equally hideous and revolting. America is false to the past, false to the present, and solemnly binds herself to be false to the future.
That's right.
Standing with God and the crushed and bleeding slave on this occasion, I will, in the name of humanity, which is outraged, in the name of liberty, which is fettered, in the name of the Constitution and the Bible, which are disregarded and trampled upon, dare to call in question and to denounce with all the emphasis I can command everything that serves to perpetuate slavery, the great sin and shame of America. I will not equivocate, I will not excuse. I will use the severest language I can command, and yet not one word shall escape me that any man whose judgment is not blinded by prejudice, or who is not at heart a slaveholder, shall not confess to be right and just.
Amen.
I fancy I hear someone of my audience say, "It is just in this circumstance that you and your brother abolitionists fail to make a favorable impression on the public mind. Would you argue more and denounce less? Would you persuade more and rebuke less? Your cause would be much more likely to succeed. But I submit, where all is plain, there is nothing to be argued. What point in the anti-slavery creed would you have me argue? On what branch of the subject do the people of this country need light?
All right.
Must I undertake to prove that the slave is a man? The slaveholders themselves acknowledge it in the enactment of laws for their government. They acknowledge it when they punish disobedience on the part of the slaves. There are 72 crimes in the state of Virginia, which, if committed by a black man, subject him to the punishment of death, while only 2 of the same crimes will subject a white man to the like punishment. What is this but the acknowledgement that the slave is a moral, intellectual, and responsible being?
That's right.
Southern statute books are covered with enactments forbidding, under severe fines and penalties, the teaching of a slave to read or to write. When you can point to any such laws in reference to the beasts of the field, then I may consent to argue the manhood of the slave. When the dogs in your streets, when the fowls of the air, when the cattle on your hills, when the fish of the sea and the reptiles that crawl shall be unable to distinguish the slave from a brute, then I will argue with you that the slave is a man.
All right now.
For the present, it is enough to affirm the equal manhood of the Negro race. It is not astonishing that while we are plowing, planting, and reaping, using all kinds of mechanical tools, erecting houses, constructing bridges, building ships, working in the metals of brass, iron, copper, silver, and gold, that while we are reading, writing, and ciphering, acting as clerks, merchants, and secretaries, having among us lawyers, doctors, ministers, poets, authors, editors, orators, and teachers, that while we are engaged in all manner of enterprise common to other men, digging gold in California, capturing the whale in the Pacific, feeding sheep and cattle on the hillside, living, moving, acting, thinking, planting, living in the families as husbands, wives, and children, and above all, confessing and worshiping the Christian's God, and looking hopefully for life and immortality beyond the grave, we are called upon to prove that we are men.
All right now.
Would you have me argue that man is entitled to liberty, that he is the rightful owner of his body? You have already declared it. Must I argue the wrongfulness of slavery? Is it to be settled by the rules of logic and argumentation, as a matter beset with great difficulty, involving a doubtful application of the principle of justice, hard to be understood? How should I look today in the presence of Americans to show that men have a natural right to freedom? To do so would be to make myself ridiculous and to offer an insult to your very understanding. There is not a man beneath the canopy of heaven that does not know that slavery is wrong for him. Amen. What am I to argue? That it is wrong to make men brutes, to rob them of their liberty, to work them without wages, to keep them ignorant of their relations to their fellow men, to beat them with sticks, to flay their flesh with the lash, to load their limbs with irons, to hunt them with dogs, to sell them at auction, to sunder their families, to knock out their teeth, to burn their flesh, to starve them into obedience and submission to their masters. Must I argue that a system thus marked with blood and stained with pollution is wrong? No, I will not. I have better employments for my time and strength than such arguments would imply.
All right now.
What then remains to be argued is that slavery is not divine, that God did not establish it, that our doctors of divinity are mistaken. There is blasphemy in the thought that which is inhuman cannot be divine. Who can reason on such a proposition? I cannot. The time for such argument is past. At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed. Oh, had I the ability and I could reach the nation's ear, I would today pour out a fiery steam of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, the earthquake. The feeling of the nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be roused. The propriety of the nation must be startled. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed. And its crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced.
Amen.
What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty an unholy license, your national greatness swelling vanity, your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless, your denunciations of tyrants brass-fronted impudence, your shouts of liberty and equality hollow mockery, your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings with all your religious parade and solemnity are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up the crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States. Go where you may, search where you will, roam through all the monarchies and despotisms of the old world, search out every abuse, and when you have found the last, lay the facts out by the side of the everyday practices of this nation, and you will say to me that for revolting barbarity and shameless hypocrisy, America reigns without rival.
That's right.
Take the American slave trade, which we are told by the papers is especially prosperous just now, and the price of men was never higher, and which is carried out in the large towns and cities in 1/2 of the Confederacy. This trade is one of the peculiarities of American institutions. In several states, this trade is a chief source of wealth. It is called the internal slave trade, in order to divert it from the horror with which the foreign slave trade is contemplated. The foreign slave trade has long been the denouncement by this government as piracy, as an execrable traffic. To arrest it, this nation keeps a squadron at immense cost on the coast of Africa. Everywhere in this country, it is safe to speak of this foreign slave trade as a most inhuman traffic, opposed alike to the laws of gods and man. It is, however, a notable fact that while so much execration is poured out by the Americans upon those engaged in the foreign slave trade, the men engaged in slave trade between the states pass without condemnation, and their business is deemed honorable.
All right, now.
All right, now English, not my first language, but it's my only language. So listen. Behold the practical operation of this internal slave trade, the American slave trade sustained by American politics and American religion. Here you will see men and women wear like swans for the market. You know what is a swan drover? I will show you a man drover. They inhabit all our southern states. Yes. They perambulate the country, the crowd, the highways of the nation. With droves of human stock, you will see one of these human flesh jobbers, armed with pistol, whip, and bowie knife, driving a company of 100 men, women, and children, from the Potomac to the slave market at New Orleans. These wretched people are to be sold singly or in lots or suit the purchasers. They are food for the cotton field and the deadly sugar mill. Mark the sad procession as it moves wearily along, and the inhuman wretch who drives them. Hear his savage yells and his blood-chilling oaths as he hurries on his afraid captives. There see the old man with locks thin and gray cast one glance, if you please, upon that young mother whose shoulders are bare to the scorching sun, her brimming tears falling on the brow of the baby in her arms. See too that girl of 13, weeping, yes, weeping, as she thinks of the mother from whom she has been torn. Sorry. The drove moves tardily, heat and sorrow have nearly consumed their strength. Suddenly you hear a quick snap, like the discharge of a rifle. The betters, sorry again.
It's okay.
Can you see all this? We're still upset. Yes? Okay. And the chain rattles simultaneously. Your ears are salute with a scream that seemed to have torn this way to the center of your soul. The crack you heard was the sound of the slave whip. The scream you heard was from the woman you saw with the baby. Her speed had faltered under the weight of a child, and her chains, that gash on her shoulder, tells her to move on. Follow this drove to New Orleans. Attend the auction. See men examined like horses. See the forms of women rudely and brutally exposed to the shocking gaze of American slave buyers. See this drove sold and separate forever. And never forget the deep, sad sobs that arose from the scattered multitude. Tell me, citizen, where under the sun you can witness a spectacle more finished and shocking, yet this is but a glance of the American slave trade as it exists at the moment in the ruling part of the United States. I was born amid such sights and scenes. To me, the American slave trade is a terrible reality. The flesh mongers gathered up their victims by dozens and drove them chained to the general depot in Baltimore, where a sufficient number has been collected here. A ship is chartered for the purpose of conveying the furlong crew to Mobile or to New Orleans. From the slave prison to the ship, they are usually driven in the darkness of night, in the deep, still darkness of midnight. I have been often aroused by the dead, heavy footsteps and the piteous cries of the chain gangs that pass outdoor.
Fellow citizens, this murderous traffic is today in active operation, this boasted republic. In the solitude of my spirit, I see clouds of dust raised on the highways of the South. I see the bleeding footsteps. I hear the doleful wail of fettered humanity on the way to the slave markets, where the victims are to be sold like horses, sheep and swine, knocked off to the highest bidder. There I see the tenderness ties ruthlessly broken to gratify the lust, caprice, and rapacity of the buyers and sellers of men. My soul sickens at this sight. But I still, more inhumane, disgraceful, and scandalous state of things remains to be presented by an act of American Congress not yet 2 years old. Slavery has been nationalized in its most horrible and revolting form. Mason and Dixon's line has been obliterated. New York has become as Virginia, and the power to hold, hunt, and sell men, women, and children as slaves remains no longer a mere state of institution, but is now an institution of the whole United States.
That's right.
The power is coextensive with the Star-Spangled Banner and American Christianity. Where these go, men may also go the merciless slave hunter. Where these are, man is not sacred. He is a bird for the sportsman's gun. By the most foul and fiendish of all human decrees, liberty and person of every man are put in peril. Your broad Republican domain is hunting ground for men. Your lawmakers have commanded all good citizens to engage in this hellish sport. Your president, your Secretary of State enforce as a duty you owe to your free and glorious country and to your God that you do this accursed thing? Not fewer than 40 Americans have, within the past 2 years, been hunted down and, without a moment's warning, hurried away in chains and consigned to slavery and excruciating torture. Some of these have had wives and children dependent on them for breed, but of this, no account was made. The right of the hunter to his prey stands superior to the right of marriage and to all rights in this republic. the rights of God included.
For black man, there's neither law nor justice, humanity nor religion. The fugitive slave law makes mercy to them a crime and bribes the judge who tries them. An American judge gets $10 for every victim he consigns to slavery, and 5 when he fails to do so. The oath of any 2 villains is sufficient under this hell-black enactment to send the most pious and exemplary black man into the remorseless jaws of slavery. His own testimony is nothing. He can bring no witness for himself. The minister of American justice is bound by the law to hear but one side, and that side is the side of the oppressor. Let this damning fact be perpetually told. Let it be thundered around the world that, in tyrant-killing, king-hating, people-loving, democratic, Christian America, the seats of justice are filled with judges who hold their offices under an open and palpable bribe, and are bound in deciding the cases of a man's liberty only to hear his accusers, in glaring violation of justice, in shameless disregard of the forms of administering law, in cunning arrangement to entrap the defenseless, and in diabolical intent. This fugitive slave law stands alone in the annals of tyrannical legislation. I take this law to be one of the grossest infringements of Christian liberty. And if the churches and ministers of our country were not stupidly blind or most wickedly indifferent, then they too would so regard it. But the church of this country is not only indifferent to the wrongs of the slave, it actually takes sides with the oppressor. It has made itself a bulwark of American slavery and the shield of American slave hunters.
That's not right.
Americans, your Republican politics, not less than your Republican religion, are flagrantly inconsistent. You boast of your love of liberty, your superior civilization, and your pure Christianity, while the whole political power of this nation is solemnly pledged to support and perpetuate the enslavement of 3 million of your countrymen. You hurl your anathemas at the crowned-headed tyrants of Russia and Austria, and pride yourselves on your democratic institutions, while you yourselves consent to be the mere tools and bodyguards of the tyrants of Virginia and Carolina.
All right now.
You invite to your shores fugitives of oppression from abroad. Honor them with banquets, greet them with ovations, cheer them, toast them, salute them, protect them, and pour out your money to them like water. But the fugitives from your own land you advertise, hunt, arrest, shoot, and kill. You glory in your refinement and your universal education, yet you maintain a system as barbarous and dreadful as ever stained the character of a nation, a system begun in avarice, supported in pride, and perpetuated in cruelty. You shed tears over fallen Hungary and make the sad story of her wrongs the theme of your poets, statesmen, and orators, till your gallant sons are ready to fly to arms to vindicate her cause against the oppressor. But in regard to the 10,000 wrongs of the American slave, You would enforce the strictest silence and would hail him as an enemy of the nation who dares to make those wrongs the subject of public discourse. You are all on fire at the mention of liberty for France, for Ireland, but are as cold as an iceberg at the thought of liberty for the enslaved of America. You discourse eloquently on the dignity of labor, yet you sustain a system which, in its very essence, casts a stigma upon labor. You can bare your bosom to the storm of British artillery to throw off a 3-penny tax on tea, and yet wring the last hard-earned farthing from the grasp of the black laborers of your country. You profess to believe that of one blood God made all nations of men to dwell on the face of all the earth, and hath commanded all men everywhere to love one another. Yet you notoriously hate and glory in your hatred all men whose skins are not colored like your own. You declare before the world and are understood by the world to declare that you hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And yet, you hold securely in a bondage which, according to your own Thomas Jefferson, is worse than ages of that which your fathers rose in rebellion to oppose, a 7th part of the inhabitants of your country.
Fellow citizens, I will not enlarge further on your national inconsistencies. The existence of slavery in this country brands your republicanism as a sham, your humanity as a base pretense, and your Christianity as a lie. It destroys your moral power abroad. It corrupts your politicians at home. It saps the foundation of religion. It makes your name a hissing and a byword to a mocking earth. It is the antagonistic force in your government, the only thing that seriously disturbs and endangers your union. It fetters your progress. It is the enemy of improvement, the deadly foe of education. It fosters pride. It breeds insolence. It promotes vice. It shelters crime. It is a curse to the earth that supports it, and yet you cling to it as if it were the sheet anchor of all your hopes. Be warned. A horrible reptile is coiled up in your nation's bosom. The venomous creature is nursing at the tender breast of your youthful republic. For the love of God, tear away and fling from you the hideous monster, and let the weight of 20 millions crush and destroy it forever. But it is answered in reply to all this that precisely what I have now denounced is, in fact, guaranteed and sanctioned by the Constitution of the United States, that the right to hold and to hunt slaves is a part of that Constitution framed by the illustrious fathers of the Republic. Then I dare to affirm, notwithstanding all I have said before, your fathers, instead of being the honest men I have before declared them to be, were the various impostors that ever practiced on mankind. This is the inevitable conclusion, and from it there is no escape. Fellow citizens, There is no matter in respect to which the people of the North have allowed themselves to be so ruinously imposed upon as that of the pro-slavery character of the Constitution. In that instrument, I hold that there is neither warrant, license, nor sanction of the hateful thing, but interpreted as it ought to be interpreted, the Constitution is a glorious liberty document.
That's right.
Allow me to say in conclusion, notwithstanding the dark picture I have this day presented of the state of the nation, I do not despair of this country. There are forces in operation which must inevitably work the downfall of slavery. I therefore leave off where I began, with hope, while drawing encouragement from the Declaration of Independence, the great principles it contains, and the genius of American institutions. My spirit is cheered by the obvious tendencies of the age. Nations do not now stand in the same relation to each other that they did ages ago. No nation can now shut itself up from the surrounding world and trot round in the same old path of its fathers without interference.
The time was when such could be done. But a change has now come over the affairs of mankind. Walled cities and empires have become unfashionable. The arm of commerce has borne away the gates of the strong city. Intelligence is penetrating the darkest corners of the globe. Wind, steam, and lightning are its chartered agents. Oceans no longer divide, but link nations together. From Boston to London is now but a holiday excursion. Space is comparatively annihilated. Thoughts expressed on one side of the Atlantic are distinctly heard on the other. The fiat of the Almighty, "Let there be light," has not yet spent its force. No abuse, no outrage, whether in taste, sport, or avarice, can hide itself from the all-pervading light. Africa must rise and put on her yet unwoven garment. In the fervent aspirations of William Lloyd Garrison, I say, and let every heart join in saying it, God speed the year of Jubilee, the wide world over. When from your galling chains set free, the oppressed shall vilely bend the knee, and wear the yoke of tyranny, like brutes no more. That year will come, and freedom's reign, to man his plundered rights again restore. God speed the day when human blood shall cease to flow, and every clime be understood, the claims of human brotherhood, and each return for evil good, and not blow for blow. That day will come, all feuds to end, and change into a faithful friend each foe. Thank you. So before we begin our discussion, I just once again want to thank all of the readers for lending your voices to today's reading. if you can, let's do a picture outside before you go. So, I hope you all took a breath throughout, soaking it all in. There's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack for the next few years, but over the next few minutes, we're going to jump to the end, which is, what is it about that speech which resonated for you about whatever you are seeing today or this month? Who wants to start? Yes.
For me, as I was listening to all the readers and I'm listening to the whole of the speech, the thing that I kept thinking about was we were 76 years in. We could have made such a difference had we taken a different path. And instead, we let those words fall on deaf ears or, didn't make that change. And so we find ourselves here. And that's what I kept feeling the whole time. It's like, it's only 76 years in. It could have been so different. Now we're here at 250 and we're regressing back to that time. Like, I feel like we could say this whole thing now, publicly, and it would still resonate.
Some of the critiques still resonate.
Yes.
Sir.
As you were reading it, I was like, oh, this is describing ICE. Just we can go after people, we don't need a warrant, we can just grab people, throw them away. And
break up families.
right, so all of that. He was speaking at a time when England had abolished slavery. There were models for another way, but the greed of people, the difficulty of change, and the permanence of the right wing of America, the slavers, the
moneyed interests,
the anti-immigrant influence is still just so pervasive, and that the curtain has opened again to let that become a national stream. It's so tragic.
Thank you. The tragedy of the cycle of history. And so thinking about cycle of history, if we can go back to 76 years, anniversary of the country, how do you think the white people in the audience in Rochester, how did they hear this speech?
Well, wasn't the audience an abolitionist audience?
The folks who were organizing it were, but they were also being called to task for being less than potent abolitionists, since they let the Fugitive Slave Act be enacted. So it's a critique of them, and as well. So it's easier to pick to notice the speck in somebody else's eye and forget the plank in our own. So to be able for us, now that we've done the critique of our neighbors, let's go back and see if we were the good crowd who invited him there. So first for the white audience.
I'm sure. Thinking about today, I'm sure there was some white person that said, he's awfully divisive. I thought I was coming for a little lecture, and he was so divisive. That's what I'm sure. We use different words, but it's what we hear today whenever a black person stands up in these little white communities and speaks their truth. That's at least what we hear a lot.
So the audience in Rochester thought, I didn't come for this, he's so divisive. That's what I'm saying. Right. Any other thoughts about what the white folks in the audience may have been thinking?
He's also telling them the way it is, right in their face. But I believe the feeling only lasted 5 minutes. Once they get out the hall, everything is the same. But I want to put a positive note to what we read, because I've always said, every time I read it, I'm like, another 400 years will be still the same. But the positive came because we mentioned New Orleans. More than 100 years ago, now I'm not accurate, a young couple at Ward 7, New Orleans, got married And then because Ward 7 in New Orleans is so bad, they can't live there. They start a new family. So they escaped and went to Chicago. And in Chicago, they passed as whites. And we now know the history. The grandson is now our Pope, Leo the 13th.
So, so in terms of passing, that is a.
It's good for them. They need it. Life is so miserable.
It is a different conversation, but an important. But on the one hand, in terms of the other audience in the room, were the black folks. So you had black folks in the room in New York, right? So how do you think that they heard this speech? Remember from our earlier conversation, some of them had just been recently emancipated in the state of New York, that now wants to look down on the other states and say, oh, the South is that way. Oh, by the way, New Jersey still had, in other New York, in the North still had slavery in 52. Yes.
So I can imagine like the fear of, oh gosh, you just made things worse for us. You just put them on the defensive and you just made things worse. Even if it could be some joy inside, but at that time, I can imagine the fear.
Right, the fear of, okay, now our allies have now
Being offended.
been offended, right?
I also think that individuals who were black at that time were probably first of all shocked that a man of their color and yoke was up there speaking the way that he was. And I also sit here and I wonder if they weren't looking around to see who's going to shoot them. Because that was a real threat at the time.
Yeah, yes, it's Frederick Douglass talks a lot about the importance in his life of confronting violence and the threat of death. And we don't talk enough about, from my standpoint, about Frederick Douglass and that part of his life. My favorite Frederick Douglass picture of him like this on the stage saying, yes, you've broken in and you want to fight, I'm good. Come get me. Well, his handler's like, can we leave the back door, please? We understand your desire to stand your ground, but we need your voice for tomorrow. And so it is interesting because he lives his life not someone who is worried about tomorrow, and that's why one of the things that they say at that conference at the end is resolved that in the resolve that among the evidences of our devotion to the cause of the slave should be, first, no connection with and no worshiping with a church which has a Negro pew, or which it associated directly or indirectly, closely or mostly with churches north or south that have it. So he's already published this 2 years prior, right? So the good people should have been offended beforehand. Then he says, resolve that in the names of God and humanity, religion, and the Constitution, we demand the liberation not only of Drayton and Sayre and Harris and Chaplin, but of the slaves of the District of Columbia, and that in these names do we also demand that the American people shall regard the refusal to liberate these victims of the slave power as just cause for revolution. So, if you ask what did he ask of America in 74, when he said, hey, why are we waiting to the 60s? Why, in 1850 he's saying, it's time for revolution. Why should we wait for them to fire Fort Sumter? Why don't we do it now? Right? And so, with that, switching over, I love the part about Black Joy. I love the part where he's like, why are we having this conversation about humanity? Let me list all the great things that Black people are already doing. Meanwhile, it takes another 50 years before we even have a convention on Black excellence. That begins the beginning of the conversation towards Negro History Week and then Black History Month. Right? So he's listing all these things, panning for gold, out in the West Coast hunting for whales. And the panning for gold was based upon his friend with the guy in New Bedford. So there are actually people tied to some of these things he's listing. But what are your thoughts? What are your experiences with Black Joy or seeing Black Joy? The way that that he listed here. What are some of the occasions of Black Joy that you have seen and you thought, I want to pan for gold, or whatever it is that you thought?
Obama.
Oh, the Obama Center.
Oh, the Obama Center or Obama?
No, President Obama.
President Obama. That was Black Joy. 8 years of Black Joy. Thank you. Any other?
Well, I really liked how we sang a song earlier, in like church hymnals, right? Black churches. Even though he's attacking the beliefs, people who are in churchgoers that are supporting these causes, I think singing in Black churches is something that shows a lot of joy.
He also went to England for a while.
Yes, he did. But any Black Joy that you've experienced outside of Obama? Anything now, current time? Yes.
So this was outside of America. It was in Taipei, where we were like a week ago.
Okay.
They had what's her name? The poet, Laurie. She was actually speaking about hope, and the way she was unpacking hope in these times, and the juxtaposition of, yes, with everything going on, this is what hope can do, And it reminded me of the times of the audacity of hope, and sitting in the audience. And sitting in the audience as a mom with my child, I was just beaming. I was like, this is what Black excellence is. And I was so proud. And I took pictures and pictures I can show you, but she's amazing.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Yes?
So I am first generation Haitian American. So last week, the Haitian team made it to the World Cup, which was not expected. Many of those players none of the players have had a chance to play together in Haiti prior to going to the World Cup. Much of their training was done virtually. Their coach was not able to coach them in person, and yet they made it to the World Cup. And so that joy, the joy that they made it, was unbelievable. But then they got to the World Cup, and even though the announcers were like, oh, Haiti's the last seed, or whatever the announcers were saying, which was always seemed to be a little bit skewed to the negative, the Haitian team proved, thank you, the Haitian team proved that they were to be there, because they played their little hearts out. Their courage, their tenacity was amazing. And when they got that first goal in the World Cup, and I watched videos of Haitians in Haiti, they didn't need to win the World Cup because they already won the World Cup as far as they were concerned. And that joy, that to me was defiance, right? You told us we couldn't wear our jerseys because it was too political. You told us that we were the worst of the worst, and we came and we showed out, we showed up, and we made our people proud. To me, that was the epitome of
joy. And that it happened at the same time with the Obama Center opening was just.
Yes, ma'am.
So in real life, I am a golf professional and I teach in Dorchester. And as I teach golf in Dorchester, to bring the child to a place, a park, next to William J. Devine Golf Course, to come out and swing a golf club. So every summer, and then spring and fall, and in the winter, we see these children, of all colors, of all people, but specifically of the Black. We see these children come and they enjoy being them. They enjoy not knowing what it's about, those that have their first time, but even those that come summer after summer, and just enjoy each other's company and their successes, and they come and tell us their joys in regards to what they're doing in school and how successful they're being and what they're going to do in the future. And we have children who are 16, 17, who are also become coaches themselves and help the younger. So it's great to see those that go off to college, come back and successful. That's a beautiful joy in real life in regards to growing and being more successful.
How on location to have Black joy around golf?
Yes.
You would think that you were a plant by someone we know. Thank you.
Yes.
There you go. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was going to say, in downtown Boston now, there are two embodiments of Black pride, Black joy. And the embrace, if you haven't spent time with sculpture on Boston Common, it's a monument to love, to pride. And the plaza underneath it is covered with names. We're Bostonians of Black and minority heroes in Boston, mostly political figures or community activists. And it's just a wonderful statue to stand at. And it's hard now because we've been there recently, and just to see the regression and to see Martin and what he fought for. And then down the street, King's Chapel is on Tremont Street, and they went through a major project to look at the slave community that they served in the 1700s, the 1800s. And there's a statue outside now of a slave woman with an open cage of the birds have left. She's beautiful, and it's just a wonderful moment if you are downtown.
Thank you. Yes.
I want to say 2 weeks ago at John F. Kennedy Library, 18 Haitians became American citizens. And 2 times before that, while the men occupied our White House was renting everything, none of them would swear in, become citizens. So they're tenacious. They waited until it calmed down. 18 of them swung in as American citizens.
Thank you, Mabel. I appreciate all of you sharing not just the Black joys you experience, but also Black joys that we can replicate here. Honoring the, like with the chapel in Boston, Church in Boston, the enslaved people who were both served by and exploited by that house of worship. As Frederick Douglass makes clear, it is really hard when you continue to associate unfettered with those who were doing harm, because it makes you more comfortable. And that indicts most of us in this room. There's a woman who Frederick Douglass meets when he comes to New Bedford, who is said to have in the mid-1800s to only buy sugar from manufacturers that don't use enslaved labor. Fair trade pre-Civil War in America.
Wow.
And running a for-profit business. And we complain about how hard it is to do whatever it is that we think is important to us to keep our lives comfortable. And so when we think about Frederick Douglass's call to make friends of our foes, he's not saying without having our foes change. He's saying understand that they can change. And so I thank you all for coming. I thank you all for helping us build community here in Stow. I thank Kelly and all the folks from Rediscover Mapledale for making this happen. Words are powerful, and so are actions. So thank you again for coming and building community, and I wish you well over the next 12 months of doing actions that make the world a great place and bring more joy to all peoples. 3 things. I'm going to do a plug and plug Kelly too. So, Clock Walker Day is coming up July 8th. So drop by Lexington that evening for a screening of the Prince Estabrook episode of the Black Patriots of Lexington. Prince Estabrook was freed in the wake of the case in '83. Then on July 11th, we have the Clock Walker Day Community Celebration at the Visitor Center. Come early, you can do the hike for freedom, which will take you by where Venus Rowe was enslaved, who also was freed in the wake of the Clock Walker case, and then you come by the green, where Prince Estabrook fought with his other members of Captain Parker's company. And then something's going on in August.
August 29th is the 100-year celebration of this golf course, with Robert H. Hawkins building the first 9 holes here, turning this farmhouse into like a community center filled with recreational activities. 1926, it happened 100 years ago. So we're gonna have a golf tournament starting at 1 o'clock, shotgun scramble style, and then we'll have a gala at night for anyone who can come and enjoy dancing. If you're not into golf, we also have dancing and dinner for you.
And there's a special guest, because Kelly's cool at tie-ins. We have a special guest to tie in to Tuskegee Airman Commemoration Day with the golf course. Say more.
Yes, I'm just blanking right now.
This is a story.
So we got in contact with a Tuskegee National Airman that started a golf club in Springfield, Massachusetts. Unfortunately, he did pass away, but I just got in contact with his son, and so we are going to honor him and his legacy posthumously, just like we're doing with Robert H. Hawkins. But we're going to have his son show up and say a few words about him too. So, yeah, very cool.
Yeah, group pictures. Okay, so readers, pictures, get everybody. So we're up front.
Yeah, and the Robbins House is also, Joe, if you want to just say like a Concord Trail.
Just that all the work we're doing, everyone's trying to do to make people feel welcome in the community. Still, just by doing this work, we make people feel welcome in Concord. If you've never been to the Robbins House in Concord, it's open every day. It's the home of a Patriot of Color. His granddaughter. It's open every day until October. It's near the North Bridge. It's free.
It's the parking lot.
Yeah, it's free right there.
Big parking lot.
And then based on what you all did, Lexington Concord's trying to finally get some visibility for Black heritage throughout the town. And it's a struggle, but we think we're almost there. We just need to get through the Historic District Commission.
Just a little pitch for Lexington. Congress trying really hard to catch up. We have 3 months. 3 months.
You're right ahead.
But good
You're
luck.
right ahead.
All right, let's go outside for pictures.
Friend and foe, remember, okay? All right, thanks
Is that
everybody
better?
for coming.
Okay, last verse. Now 3 rousing cheers for the Union. Now 3 rousing cheers for the Union. Now 3 rousing cheers for the Union. As we are marching on.